Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today's video is going to be giving tips and tricks about grinding two of the most relevant vehicles in the game right now, and that is the T-10 and the Object 430 version 2. Now, why are these vehicles relevant? Well, a lot of people are grinding them because the next patch 1.0.2, which is rumored that it might be hitting the server as early as this Wednesday, these two tanks lead on into two new vehicles. The T-10 leads into the Object 277, which is going to be a tier 10 Soviet heavy tank, and it plays a lot like this tank, but obviously at tier 10. It's kind of got that IS-7 main armament, but it pretty much has the T-10 mobility and has kind of a good upper plate but a weaker lower plate. It's practically a T-10 at tier 10. That's a bit of a tongue twister to say that quickly. Now, the T-10, definitely a fan favorite at tier 9. I don't know why people love this tank so much, but then again, after this replay, it always becomes clear to me. It's fast, it's got a big gun, it's got 122mm, and it loves to rush into position and punish medium and light tanks. Now, the vehicle's armor, 120mm at the front and the side and 250 on the front of the turret, is very nice. If I can get this thing hull down, I'll pretty much let everything apart from somebody who's using high explosive or a tier 10 tank destroyer shoot me in the turret. Now, hull armor, that's a different kind of story. I know that my hull armor is going to hold up fairly reliably against the WZ-132, and in a very nice matchup against like the Progetto 46, and when you even get to engage some tier 7 tanks. I do feel very confident with this vehicle. Now, it's when you kind of sit in front of tier 10 vehicles that the T-10's armor really starts to falter. And so what I personally love to do with the T-10, and what I used to do with it back when it was the IS-8, I think way back in the day, it was before it was redesignated the T-10, is I would use the mobility of the vehicle, its very decent pound to weight ratio, which is just under 15 horsepower per ton, and the decent top speed limit of 50 kilometers an hour, to basically rush into position and get that initial shot or two, or hopefully an isolation on an opponent who decided to rush there as well, and shut them down before the game has even really got going. So that's exactly what I did here. I took my opportunity to get forwards, to get a shot into the 1390. Now I'm using the vehicle in its hull down capacity, and that's what I love about the T-10, is that you just rush into a position as fast as you can, and then hopefully just dig into a position that not many vehicles that are so heavily armored could have got into. It's pretty much like a more heavily armored medium tank, but then again at tier 9 it's got a competitor like the Object 430 now. But of course, this thing's got 440 alpha, and it has decent penetration as well, much better penetration than you would get on a tier 9 medium tank. It's kind of weird in a way, because that changes obviously when you get towards T-10, and yeah, nice try, Progetto. Well, I guess he has got to get out of there, but whoa, we take 432 hit points away from him before the T-62A finishes him off. But what's funny is that the tier 9 medium tanks, a lot of them don't even have guns that are as nearly as good as the tier 9 heavy tanks, and that is the case when you look at the 432 or the T-54 versus the T-10. Just having that 258mm of penetration on your standard ammunition with 440 alpha damage and 340mm of heat pen just allow you to do things that other vehicles simply cannot. Now, of course, when you're grinding, after you know that the game is going to be won, and when I'm 6 tanks ahead like this, it's pretty much guaranteed that we're going to be taking this one down. You don't want to hang around. If you've got hit points to burn and you know the game is going to be won, then just get stuck in. And when you're playing the two vehicles that I'm showcasing on the channel today, you have the mobility to be able to do that. Now, I fire a high explosive round there, and it actually looks like the fence catches the shell. I was hoping maybe I could shoot in between the fence there, however, not to be. But of course, this Object 257, another tier 9 Soviet heavy tank, he's got really good side armor, and he'll probably be able to ricochet me with the lower part of his hull there, even when he's well angled like that, or even when he's kind of over angling, I meant to say, but he's not going to be absorbing the high explosive round. But as I was saying, as soon as you know that the game is safe, use those hit points. It's all about maximizing the amount of spotting you deal, the kills you get, the damage you deal, to be able to grind through these vehicles as quickly as possible and end the game with the highest amount of average experience, not average experience, the amount of experience you get from the battle, but obviously your average experience over a number of games. And that's really as simple as it is. Of course, I've given tips and tricks about how to maximize your experience in World of Tanks with some longer-winded replays, but it's as simple as oh, well, that's not very nice of him. This was a large amount of damage and spotting done in a rather short period of time, which, you know, that's maximizing everything you can. I'm not saying that every game I play in the T-10 is like this. If it was, then I would probably play it a lot more. But this was the T-10 in its perfect environment, and Scumbag Object 261 on my team finishes me off, I guess maybe stopping me from getting a Steel War medal as well. Anyway, before we take a quick look at the post-game stats, let's take a look at the other vehicle, the Object 430 version 2. So now we're going to be taking a look at the Tier 9 medium tank that will be leading on to the K91 come the next patch. And the K91, I think it was probably the more exciting of the two vehicles, at least in the second iteration of the test server, as you will have seen in my full preview of the vehicle that I released on this channel, I think last weekend. Now the K91's looking like it's probably going to be one of, if not the best, long-range support tanks in the game. That isn't a tank destroyer, but of course it has a semi-traversable turret, so it's going to be a toss-up whether you want to play a pure tank destroyer or want to play that as kind of a go-between, as in it's like a medium tank destroyer thing. Now the 432 will actually be changing in the next patch, but at least for now it's kind of hybrid T-54 that nobody has seemed to really care about all that much. It's such a bizarre tank because it has all the mobility of a T-54, it's got the DPM of a T-54, even slightly better now if you want to choose to use the stock gun on this tank. And that allows you to get into position and play as if you were a kind of a medium tank sniper like this. And bam! Scorpion G out the game before it is even begun, really, at least for that player. Now, the 432 as well has got this really good sidearm, or at least it has had up until this point, of 80mm, and because it's got a rear-mounted turret, as we can see here, that allows you to side-scrape like an absolute boss. And so quite often in the 432, I would like to take this tank more into a location like over here, where the Oh-Ho is and where the Yak Tiger is, and I'd love to side-scrape around a corner like this, or side-scrape around a corner like that, or even wait for the enemies to be able to come into this line of fire, and then use a location like this to be able to take them on. However, on Siegfried Line Assault, you can only do that if you manage to still hold the flanks, and I thought that considering I'm one of the top tier vehicles here, it was up to me to be able to hold the flank and then stop the enemies from flanking around, because if they do, then side-scraping doesn't even matter in this tank. If they do manage to get behind you, all it takes is a tracking shot on this vehicle, and then it can't fully traverse the turret. So if you do see one of these on the battlefield, definitely take advantage of that. And so the 432, it's kind of this enigma in a way. It's able to side-scrape like a heavy medium, but it's also had the capacity to play like a mid to long range tank. However, next patch, while you still will be able to side-scrape in this tank a little bit, Wargaming are massively nerfing the armor of this vehicle, but increasing the penetration and the accuracy and a little bit of the rate of fire. And so next patch, the 432, you're going to have to play this thing truly like a mid to long range sniper, unless you're in a very good matchup, and then you might get away with still being able to play that brawling role. But for me, I've always played this thing as a let's just go, get up in their faces and just go for it. Now there's one thing that this tank, right up until this point, has been absolutely horrific for, and that is the penetration on its standard rounds. You might see me firing premium rounds in this game even though it's a nice matchup. That's because you have 201mm of penetration on your standard rounds, and they've got 320 alpha damage, and they cost 1,230 credits per shot. It's made this tank absolutely ludicrous because more often than not, you are dabbing that 2 key, paying Wargaming for the privilege, I guess, to load the gold and to fire premium rounds in this vehicle, and you're paying kind of like 5,000 credits to do 320 alpha damage. But that's really what it just came down to with this tank. And even if you didn't want to use the stock gun on this vehicle and wanted to use the upgraded gun, you still only had 219mm of penetration, which is not even close to being efficient for a tier 9 tank, or should I say being competitive, right? Now, of course, all that's going to probably change, well, definitely going to change with the next patch as this vehicle transitions into this kind of mid to long range sniper. It'll gain a substantial amount of penetration, but we'll also just have to see about when you lose all the armor on this vehicle, is it going to be as fun to play as it was now? Did I really just call the Object 432 fun to play? I'm not sure about that. It can be rewarding, but it always just feels like it's just such a cookie cutter of a tank that you do well in the scenarios that you were going to do well in. And that 4 degrees of gun depression just gives you a big old slap every time you want to work a ridgeline in this tank. But of course, just like I said in the T-10, at this kind of a stage in the game when the enemies are in a rout, it's all about just getting as far forward as you possibly can, trying to get as many shots in, and this tank with the stock gun has 2,500 damage per minute, so that's a big upgrade over what you were used to at tier 8. And so hopefully we're going to be able to finish off the Centurion. But look, now the armor's really starting to fall apart on this vehicle. We get penned by the Stritzfang 1030, the Centurion, the AMX-30. Now I actually have to try and defend myself intelligently, would you believe it? So now I'm going to try and do the side scraping in this tank, but is it going to be too little too late as the Scorpion G just comes around the corner and whacks one into the AMX-30? But at least I am going to get to finish off that tank, and now turn my attention to the Stritzfang 1030. Now remember, this thing's got 40mm of all-round frontal armor, so my armor-piercing rounds are never going to go through, so I'm going to shoot the tracks instead to be able to maximize my tracking at the end of the game. And as you can see, I was starting to dab the 2 key to fire heat rounds, because heat will go through up to 85 degrees of angled armor, and it's one of the easiest ways to counter a Swedish tank destroyer. Can we even say counter when it's just about loading the gold and paying more credits for it? Anyway, I digress. 2 hopefully useful rounds for you for grinding up towards your next 2 tier 10 Soviet heavy tanks. So the T-10 game was a Confederate, a high caliber, 1,501 base experience points. That's not bad in a 4-minute game. And I'm pretty sure we lost a steel wall there. Yeah, we did get hit 11 times in 2,400, so we would have got a steel wall if it wasn't for this absolute scumbag on my team. And because I don't think we fired any premium rounds in the T-10, because you've got that higher penetration, 63,000 credits profit with a premium account, I stress. Next up, Confederate, high caliber, tank sniper, 5,600 damage, 1,410 base experience, again in a very quick round. But this time I did fire some heat rounds because of the awful standard penetration on this tank, and I would have lost credits without a premium account, but 22,000 with. So the T-10 and the Object 430 version 2, probably 2 of the least painful vehicles that I had to grind to prepare for the next patch. And that's hardly surprising, because they're Soviet, they're fast, they've got some raw power in their guns, and the armor to go with it to boot. And that's about it for today, ladies and gents. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, but if you didn't, make sure you give it a thumbs down. And if you're watching it as it's released on Sunday, it's time for another World of Tanks Tech Tree Showcase on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby. And this week, and thanks to the 550 of you who voted, the winner is the Chinese tier 10 medium tank, the 121. And finally that tank wins after losing a couple of weeks by a single vote, right? So come along right now as I start at tier 1 and work my way up towards tier 10, so you can see if it's a line that's worth grinding, or alternatively, if you've already got the tanks, pick up a few tips and tricks along the way. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing as many of you as possible right now on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby. And also a massive thank you to everyone who has picked up one of my Load the Gold t-shirts after my video on Wednesday this week. I really didn't expect so many to be purchased. It's very, very, very kind of you. And as soon as the campaign ends in 7 hours from now, then they're going to be printed and sent to you, hopefully within a week or 2. And so as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.